Story number 1. The Ballroom. I arrived at the Wentworth Hotel at 6:30 in the evening to coordinate security for a Valentine's Day wedding reception. The contract was standard work for a venue that attracted high-profile clients, mostly old Charleston families with money and expectations to match. My role was perimeter control and guest verification, nothing I hadn't done 100 times before. The bride's family had requested additional surveillance of the third-floor ballroom. The father mentioned concerns about uninvited guests, which I documented as routine precautionary measures. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. People have their reasons for wanting extra eyes on an event. I conducted a walkthrough at 6:45. The ballroom was set for 200 guests. Round tables arranged around a central dance floor, southeast corner dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the street. Everything appeared in order. I positioned myself near the main entrance as guests began arriving at 7. At 7:15, during the cocktail hour, I observed a woman in a pale blue dress standing near the southeast corner window. She was alone, facing the glass, and something about her posture struck me as off. I checked my guest manifest and security tablet. No one matching her description had entered through the main doors or service entrance. Our camera feeds showed no record of her arrival. I crossed the ballroom to verify her credentials. As I approached, she turned toward me. Her expression was difficult to describe. Confused recognition, perhaps. Like she knew me but couldn't place from where. Before I could speak, she walked directly toward the closed ballroom door that led to the service corridor. She didn't open it, she walked through it. I moved quickly to the door. It was locked from the inside, exactly as I had set it 30 minutes earlier. I unlocked it and checked the adjacent hallway and both stairwells. No one. I radioed my partner stationed at the ground floor entrance. He confirmed no one had passed his position in the last 10 minutes. I returned to my post and made a note in my incident log. Time, location, description. I did not include the detail about the door. Over the next 40 minutes, 3 separate guests approached me with complaints about the southeast corner. 2 mentioned feeling suddenly cold despite the ballroom's climate control running normally. A bridesmaid, visibly shaken, told me someone had whispered her name when she was standing alone near the windows. She was certain of it. I documented each report and assured them I would investigate. At 8:05, the wedding photographer found me near the gift table. He was pale and kept glancing at his camera screen. He asked if I had seen anyone unusual in a pale blue dress. I told him I had. He showed me his screen. The woman appeared in 7 photographs taken throughout the evening, always in the background, always facing away from the lens. In one image, she stood directly behind the bride during the cake cutting. In another, she was visible through the window reflection while the father gave his toast. The photographer had not noticed her while taking the shots. I asked him to send me the files. He agreed but requested I not mention it to the bride's family. He said it would upset them and he needed the referral business. I understood his position. At 8:20, I made the decision to restrict access to the southeast section of the ballroom. I moved the gift table to create a natural barrier and cordoned the area with stanchions, telling the venue coordinator we had a ventilation issue that needed assessment. This was not authorized by my supervisor or the venue management. I exceeded my operational parameters. The coordinator accepted my explanation without question. Guests kept clear of the area for the remainder of the evening. I received no further complaints about cold spots or whispers. The reception concluded at 11:20. The bride and groom departed for their hotel suite. Guests filtered out in groups, laughing and taking photographs on the front steps. I conducted a final sweep of the ballroom. The southeast corner was empty and showed no signs of temperature anomaly when I checked with my handheld thermometer. I unlocked the service door and confirmed the corridor remained clear. I submitted my standard report at 11:50, listing only the guest concerns and the ventilation precaution. I did not mention the woman in pale blue or the photographs. My supervisor acknowledged receipt and marked the contract complete. 3 days later, The venue manager called me directly. She said she had reviewed my report and wanted to provide context I might find relevant for future bookings. She explained that a woman named Catherine Ashford died in that ballroom in 1962 during her own wedding reception. Sudden cardiac event, no warning signs. She was 24 years old. The dress she wore that evening was pale blue. The manager told me the hotel maintains a standing policy not to book Valentine's Day events on the third floor, but the bride's family had specifically requested that ballroom and offered to pay a premium rate. The manager approved it against protocol. She asked if I had observed anything that should be documented. I told her I had not. She thanked me for my discretion and said the hotel would not be renewing its contract with our security firm for third-floor events. She made it clear this was not a reflection on my performance. I understood what she meant. I burned the photographs the wedding photographer sent me. I deleted the corresponding incident log entries from my personal records. The official report remains on file with my employer, sanitized and unremarkable. The case was closed without classification and archived under standard venue security protocols. I have not returned to the Wentworth Hotel. Story number 2. Dispatch log 447. I took the first call at 1900 hours on Valentine's Day. The board was quiet, which was typical for a Thursday evening in February. The caller identified herself as Patricia Holcomb, said she lived next door to an elderly woman on Hickory Gap Road and hadn't seen her in 3 days. Mail was piling up. No answer at the door. She gave me the address as 412 Hickory Gap Road and asked if we could send someone to check. I dispatched Deputy Mason. He was already in the northern sector and confirmed he'd be on location within 15 minutes. I logged the call as a welfare check and moved on to updating the weather advisory board. We had freezing rain forecast for after midnight. Mason called clear at 1923. He reported no vehicle in the drive, no lights on inside, no response to his knocking. He checked the perimeter and found all doors and windows secure. He left a card in the doorframe. I closed the call as unfounded and noted his report in the system. At 1941, the same number called back. I answered with my standard greeting, and the voice on the other end was male, younger, maybe mid-30s. He said his name was David Carmichael, and he needed us to check on his grandmother at 412 Hickory Gap Road. He said he'd been calling her all day with no answer. I told him we'd just cleared a welfare check at that address 20 minutes prior. He said he understood, but could we please check again? He had a bad feeling. I asked if he was calling from Patricia Holcomb's residence, and there was a pause before he said yes, he was visiting Patricia, she'd let him use her phone. I dispatched Mason again. He responded with a longer silence than usual before confirming he was en route. I heard the resignation in his voice. Mason arrived at 2000 hours exactly. He reported the same conditions as before. No changes, no vehicle, no lights, no movement. He walked the property again and checked the small detached garage. Empty. He cleared the call and asked if I had any additional information on the resident's name or next of kin. I told him I didn't, that both callers had only provided the address. The third call came at 20:07. A woman's voice, older, shaking slightly. She said her daughter lived at 412 Hickory Gap Road, and she hadn't heard from her since Tuesday. She needed us to check on her right away. I asked for her name and she said Margaret. I asked if she was calling from Patricia Holcomb's number, and she said yes. Patricia was her friend and had offered her phone. I dispatched Mason for the third time. He didn't respond immediately. When he did, he asked me to confirm the callback number. I read it back to him. He said he'd respond, but requested I note the pattern in the log. Between 2000 and 2200 hours, I received 5 more calls from that number. Each voice was different. A teenage girl looking for her aunt, an older man asking about his sister, a child who said her mummy lived there, a woman with a thick accent I couldn't place. Another man, this one older, who said he was the landlord and needed to check on his tenant. Each time I asked if they were calling from Patricia Holcomb's residence, they confirmed they were. Each time I dispatched Mason, and each time he found the same empty house with no signs of occupancy or distress. On the sixth dispatch, Mason asked me to stay on the line while he approached. I heard his boots on gravel, heard him climb the porch steps. I heard him knock 3 times and announce himself as County Sheriff's Department. The line was silent except for his breathing and the faint sound of wind. Then the call from Hickory Gap Road disconnected. Not a hang-up sound, just silence, then the dial tone. Mason came back on the radio 30 seconds later. He said the house was secure and he was clearing the scene. His voice was flat. He asked me to flag the address in the system and notify the supervisor. At 22:15, during a lull, I pulled the audio logs to document the call pattern for my report. I went back to 1900 hours and found the first call from Patricia Holcomb. I searched forward from there. There was nothing. No second call at 1941, no third call at 2007. No calls at all from that number after the initial welfare check request. I checked the dispatch log. Mason had been sent to 412 Hickory Gap Road 7 times between 1900 and 2200 hours. Each dispatch was recorded. Each clearance was noted, but there were no corresponding incoming calls except the first one. I called my supervisor at home. She came in at 2300 hours and sat with me while I walked her through the evening. She listened to the first call, then asked me to play the others. I pulled up the audio files. They weren't there. She had me search by timestamp, by callback number, by address. Nothing. She made a call to the telephone company's emergency line. I heard her side of the conversation. She gave them the number and asked for the account status. She was quiet for a long time, then thanked them and disconnected. The number had been out of service since June of 2023. The account holder, Patricia Holcomb, had passed away that May. The house at the neighboring address had been sold to a family from North Carolina. They'd moved in over the summer. My supervisor made 2 more calls, both to numbers I didn't recognize. She spoke quietly and used phrases I'd heard before in other contexts. Equipment, malfunction, system anomaly, file quarantine. She wrote something on her notepad, tore off the page, and folded it twice. At 23:45, she told me to log the incident as a switching system error and transfer all related files to regional administration. She said someone from the state office would be in touch about updated protocols. She said I'd done everything correctly and there was nothing to be concerned about. I was reassigned to day shift rotation the following Monday. The training session on equipment malfunction protocols lasted 4 hours and covered scenarios I'd never encountered in 4 years of dispatch work. The instructor never mentioned Hickory Gap Road, and I didn't ask. The incident was closed and archived under a reference number I was instructed not to retain. Story number 3. Exit interview. I arrived at the Safe House apartment in suburban Minneapolis at 7:45 in the evening on February 14, 2024, for a routine Valentine's Day check-in on a protected witness from a federal racketeering case. The assignment was standard protocol. We increase contact frequency around holidays and personally significant dates. Witnesses under long-term protection often experience psychological strain during these periods. The witness, a 41-year-old male under the alias Michael Hendricks, had been compliant for 8 months and was scheduled for a standard welfare verification and security sweep. His file indicated no behavioral concerns. He had maintained employment at a logistics company under his cover identity. His psychological evaluations had been unremarkable. He had followed all movement restrictions and communication protocols without deviation. When I entered using my master key after he failed to respond to the door, I found him seated at the kitchen table with 2 place settings, 2 glasses of wine, and a half-eaten meal still warm. The apartment was quiet. The television was off. I announced myself according to procedure. Hendricks looked up at me with an expression I initially categorized as mild confusion, then smiled and said his girlfriend would be right out. The second place setting showed clear signs of use. There was lipstick on the glass rim in a shade of dark red. The food on the plate had been partially consumed. The napkin had been unfolded and used. The chair was pulled back at an angle, suggesting someone had recently risen from it. I observed condensation still present on the wineglass. The meal appeared to be homemade pasta, with what I recognized as ingredients from his last approved grocery delivery. No second person was listed in his file, and surveillance logs showed no entry or exit since my last visit 3 weeks prior. I checked my tablet to confirm. The building had 2 points of entry, both monitored. The logs were complete. I had reviewed them in my vehicle before entering. Hendricks had left for work at 6:30 that morning and returned at 5:15 in the evening. No other individuals had accessed the apartment. The system had not been tampered with. Hendricks appeared disoriented and insisted his girlfriend had just stepped into the bedroom. He gestured toward the closed bedroom door. He asked if I wanted to meet her. His tone was casual, even pleased. When I explained that no one else was present and that the bedroom door had been sealed from my side per protocol, he laughed. He said I must have just missed her. He stood and walked toward the bedroom, calling out a name. Jennifer. He used the name twice. I followed standard procedure and checked all rooms. The bathroom was empty. The closet in the hallway contained only his clothing and approved belongings. The living room showed no signs of occupancy beyond Hendricks himself. I returned to the kitchen and found him standing outside the bedroom door, knocking gently. He was speaking in a low voice. I could not make out the words. When I approached, he turned and asked me to give them a moment. He said she was shy around strangers. The bedroom door was locked from the inside, despite the apartment having only one key, which Hendricks wore on a chain around his neck, per our requirements. I observed the key still present on the chain. I asked him to unlock the door. He touched the key and appeared confused. He tried the handle. It did not turn. He knocked again, louder this time. He called the name Jennifer again. There was no response. His confusion shifted into something closer to concern. When I breached the bedroom door, I found women's clothing laid out on the bed. A black dress, undergarments, a pair of shoes placed neatly on the floor beside the bed. The clothing appeared new or well-maintained. The dress was a size and style consistent with a woman in her mid-30s. I photographed the items. In the bathroom, I found a second toothbrush in the holder beside Hendricks' own. It was damp. I observed a faint scent of unfamiliar perfume that did not match any product in the apartment. I had conducted a full inventory during my previous inspection. These items had not been present. Hendricks stood in the doorway. He was staring at the bed. I asked him where he had obtained the clothing. He did not answer. I asked him again using his alias. He said Jennifer had brought them. He said she had been staying with him for the past 2 weeks. He described her daily routine. She worked remotely, he said. She left the apartment only when he did early in the morning and returned separately. He provided specific details. The coffee she preferred, the side of the bed she slept on, an argument they had about whether to watch a particular movie. I checked the surveillance logs again on my tablet. I expanded the range to 30 days. There was no evidence of any additional occupant. I checked the grocery deliveries. Hendricks had not requested additional food beyond his normal amounts. I checked the building's exterior cameras. No unidentified individual had entered or exited in correlation with his movements. Hendricks became unresponsive to questioning and began speaking to empty space beside him. He reached out as though touching someone's arm. He apologized. He said he had not meant to hide anything. He turned his head as though listening. He nodded. He told the empty air that everything would be fine. When I asked him directly who he was speaking to, he looked at me as though I had asked something absurd. He said Jennifer was standing right there. He pointed to a space approximately 18 inches to my left. I asked him to describe Jennifer. He did so in detail. Height, weight, hair color, eye color. The description matched his deceased wife from before witness protection, who had been killed in the incident that prompted his cooperation. His wife had been shot during the home invasion that led to his testimony. She had died in their kitchen. The event was documented in his case file. Hendricks had not spoken about her during any of his psychological evaluations. The counselor had noted this as potential avoidance, but not pathological. I made the decision to remove him from the location without filing an immediate report and transported him to a secondary facility for psychological evaluation outside normal channels. Hendricks did not resist. He asked twice if Jennifer could come with him. I told him that would not be possible. He became quiet. During the drive, he stared out the window. At one point, he said he understood. He said it had been nice while it lasted. The safe house was decommissioned and reclassified as unsuitable for program use. I returned the following morning with a team to collect Hendricks's belongings and conduct a final sweep. The women's clothing was gone. The second toothbrush was gone. The second place setting had been cleared, though I had left it untouched. The apartment smelled only of cleaning products and stale air. My photographs showed the items clearly. The team saw the photographs. No one offered an explanation. Hendricks was transferred to a new location under a revised identity. His psychological evaluation was marked inconclusive. My incident report was filed under administrative closure rather than security breach. The case remains sealed.